Joe Biden, he says this is the most consequential election due to the possibility of 4 more years of George. Well, the Biden gaffe's getting a little out of control, and AOC, she pushes for Biden to offer Bernie Sanders a cabinet position. And Kamala Harris, she doesn't know how to react after being told she's the most far-left member of the U.S. Senate. We've got that and much more coming up, and it starts right now. Happy Monday. Welcome to the news and why it matters. I'm Hillary Kennedy. I am filling in for Miss Sarah Gonzalez while she's enjoying her maternity leave. I love Mondays because there's so much to get to, so many stories to talk about. And luckily, I have with me here today Mr. Glenn Beck, host of the Glenn Beck program, and Mr. Chad Prather, host of the Chad Prather Show. Thank you for being here. All right, so over the weekend, Biden again, boy, he's really not making a lot of friends with some of these reporters who are bringing up the Hunter Biden controversy. He got a little hostile, actually, with a reporter who brought it up, and we have a clip. Let's take a listen.
Okay, Mr. Biden, if I can.
Sure.
Questions of controversy continues today about Hunter Biden, your son's...
There is no controversy about my son. It's all a lie. It's a flat lie because the president has nothing else to run on. If you notice, while American people are talking about what's happening to their families, he has no plan. In the debate, he has no plan. Everything from the Wall Street Journal over every other major news outlet has said what he's saying is simply not true about my son. But it's classic Trump. Classic Trump. And because he doesn't want to talk about how manufacturing has gone into recession, how our economy's in a hole, how we're approaching a bleak winter. It's estimated 200,000 more people will die of COVID if we don't act more rapidly in terms of dealing with rational basis of social distancing, wearing masks, etc. And what's he do? He's going around the country holding these great spreaders of more virus. I mean, so he has nothing to say. Think about it. What is his plan for the next 4 years except more of the same? Failure.
So I thought it was interesting. Joe Biden didn't really elaborate on what he believed was a lie that was reported. He didn't say what it was. He just said, none of it's true, but he didn't say what exactly. But of course, you know, the Director of National Intelligence, the FBI, the Department of Justice, they've all come out and said the laptop is not a product of Russian disinformation, even though the media's tried to claim that it is. But isn't it interesting how quickly he turned that question around and made it about Trump?
Oh, well, that's the only thing he can do. Mm-hmm. And you notice he went beyond the laptop. He said, there is no controversy about my son. None of that is true. Really? Because a lot of that is true. In fact, the New York Times thought it was a problem back in 2016 and I believe 2018. They were questioning the very relationships that are now shown in these documents. They thought it was a story back then. They just don't think it's one now.
Yeah. Isn't it funny? If you watch Joe Biden, every time he has any form of an interview or anything, he always turns it, let's talk about this man and what he's doing and how he has no plan. That he turns it every time to that, and he goes into talking about the bleak winter and we're going to dig ourselves into a hole. Imagine if this were Donald Trump Jr. Let's imagine this was a Trump kid, and to have everything that's come out that we've seen, just what we've seen, how much the news media would be talking about this and hammering this. Why does no one ask Joe Biden, where is your son? Where is he? Where is he? He's certainly not in your campaign ads. So where physically is he right now? That's what I'd like to know.
What are you suggesting? I'm
suggesting that it wouldn't blow my mind if I found out that he partied a little too hard last weekend.
Wow.
Now, do you think that there will come a point, though, where there's enough hard evidence that he will be forced to give a straight answer? Or do you think he will continue to just deny?
Before the election.
Not before the election. And that's what I think what Chad just said actually could take place, where Hunter is the key to bring down his dad. And, he parties too hard and is gone, or somebody makes that happen to stop it, and then out of grief, Joe Biden has to step down and leave the office, and Kamala becomes our president. I mean, that's crazy conspiracy stuff, but I have to tell you, nothing would shock me anymore.
Right.
Nothing would shock me.
Now, there's half a dozen really solid scenarios. You've come up with several of them. I've thought of some off-the-wall stuff that would be very feasible and believable, certainly plausible at this point in time, that would make Joe Biden step down if elected president.
And one of them would be, we're going to prosecute you. There's enough. You watch. There may be interest after the election in this story. And if there is interest from the mainstream media, you know he was nothing more than a Trojan horse.
Yeah.
He was brought in, and if there's interest in it, it could very easily be the powers that be coming to him and saying, look, we need to have a talk. You know, you can go out and say, we'll say that it was a problem with you of, health or whatever, but you got to go. Otherwise, we're going to prosecute.
Come to us, Joseph. We must talk.
Yeah, I mean, it is.
Yeah. It could get very interesting. I hope it never comes to that, because I hope we don't have to face that potential crisis.
Right.
I really hope we don't.
Well, he's had a rough go the past couple days anyway, because he warned yesterday that next month election, that it was the most consequential in a long time because of what would happen if there were 4 more years of George.
A lot of people think this is George W. Bush, but it's actually George Washington. He remembers when he was first in the Senate and George Washington was president.
Well, and the sad thing is, too, I mean, he didn't just say it once. He said it twice. He did correct himself, but he did say it twice. We've got a clip. Take a listen.
The most consequent, not because I'm running, but because who I'm running against. This is the most consequential election in a long, long, long time. And the character of the country, in my view, is literally on the ballot. What kind of country we're going to be. 4 more years of George, he's going to find ourselves in a position where if Trump gets elected, we're going to be in a different world.
I mean, kudos to his wife for keeping a straight face and not throwing the elbow.
Yeah.
And,
Did you notice her lips, though?
Yeah, she was like, oh, yeah. She's like, Trump.
You dumb bastard.
Well, and unfortunately, that wasn't the only remark that he made over the weekend. He also said something about voter fraud organization on accident. Let's take a look at that.
We have put together, and you guys did it for our administration, the President Obama's administration before this. We have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics.
I think that's absolutely true, but that's not what he meant.
Right, he didn't mean to say that. So people were kind of confused. They didn't know what he was referring to. He clarified on Twitter. He said, if in fact you have any problem, go to, and I don't have the number, but it's 833-DEM-VOTE. We have over 1,000 lawyers, and they'll answer the phone if you think there's any challenge to your voting. How are the Democrats able to ignore all of these gaffes?
First of all, Joe Biden is running against George Trump for the Senate in New Hampshire, Nevada, and Barack America looks on with pride and glee. If you notice at the beginning of that last clip you played, he starts off rubbing the polydent off the corner of his mouth, getting the slobber off of there so he can talk. He needs to have a conversation with Nancy Pelosi and see how she's keeping her teeth in, because this is not looking good for Joe. The stutter aside, this guy is his own worst nightmare. And then, but I love Jill, who's sitting there stoically going, Trump.
But you know what's amazing? You're old enough to remember Reagan? Yeah. At the end, the last 4 years, Ronald Reagan, they said, oh, he is going senile, he's crazy, blah, blah, blah. And that would only be because he would go, well, and then he'd answer the question. You know what I mean? Oh, he's stalling with that well thing. This guy doesn't know who's president. It wasn't, it's not like, because another 4 years of Barack Obama. No, we have to go back another president. You got to go back to the year 2000 to find George Bush. He is clearly not up for the job. Clearly.
The guy, listen, America's 240 years old? He's been in office for, a fifth of that.
Crazy.
It's really crazy how long this guy's been in Washington, D.C. He's seen a lot of people come and go, but you're running for the highest. Earl Putin's running Russia, right? So, we just call him by whatever name pops into our head, and then he gets a pass on whatever. This guy's slipping. I had a neurosurgeon who was talking to me recently. He said, watch how he walks. Just watch how he walks. He doesn't swing his arms. Most guys, when they walk, they swing their arms. One of the sure signs of neurological damage or brain damage is when they stay stiff at the arms when they walk. He never moves his arms on something like that.
Well, there is an exception to that rule. Have you ever noticed that Vladimir Putin only swings one arm when he walks? Because the KGB the KGB in him was so well disciplined. The one where his sidearm always was does not swing.
Move.
He doesn't move. He swings one arm when he walks.
That's right.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, so,
Just Joseph.
Speaking of George Bush, George W. Bush, he had a couple of moments in office where he had some gaffes and people ran with it and,
They
made
crucified
fun of
him for it, but still.
Look, Joe Biden has always been a gaffe machine, and it's always been hilarious. This isn't gaffes. This is a man slipping. You go back to even the beginning of the primaries. He was much more together. He has slipped in the last 9 months to a point to where it's really getting sad, really sad.
Yeah. It is sad. And to keep putting lids on your campaign when you're 9 days out, 8 days out from an election, and he might show up in Georgia tomorrow, we'll see. But you're capping your day. He's nowhere. Today is Monday, 8 days before the election. He's nowhere to be found. He's in his basement.
And Donald Trump would be going until 2 o'clock in the morning and back up.
He's already done 3 cities in Pennsylvania today.
Well, and it does sound like he's really using Trump being out as, he's putting people in harm's way and using that as the example of why he's not out campaigning. Right.
This man and that plan.
So we'll talk a little bit about President Trump real quickly. It says if President Donald Trump wins re-election next month, he will move to immediately dismiss at least 3 senior government officials, according to a report from Axios. That would be the FBI Director Christopher Wray, CIA Director Gina Haspel, and Defense Secretary Mark Esper. So according to Axios, Wray will be the first one on the chopping block. And the 2 sources who reportedly have discussed the plans personally with Trump told Axios that Wray and Haspel are despised and distrusted almost universally in Trump's inner circle. They said Trump would have fired both officials already, but didn't want to instigate another political headache right before Election Day. They said Trump's reportedly angry that Haspel's opposed declassifying documents that would aid U.S. Attorney John Durham's investigation into the origins of the Trump-Russia investigation. He's been really upset with that. And then with Esper, he wasn't happy with the defense secretary for not supporting a plan to send active duty military units into American streets as a response to all the racial unrest that plagued the city earlier in the summer.
You don't want necessarily active military units in the streets. However, you don't also want to disagree with the president the way he did. He came out and said, we'll never do that. That's crazy talk. No, you just say, no, we're not talking about it at this time. And you voice that to the president. That was a shot across the bow from the Pentagon that I think those people who don't like Donald Trump were saying, no help coming from here. Constitutionally, it has to be done in a certain way. And as long as it's constitutional, if you won't do it, then he should be fired.
Yeah, I like Donald Trump, the businessman. Donald Trump, the politician, sometimes gets himself in trouble when he starts trying to play it the political way. I like the slow to hire, quick to fire Donald Trump. And regardless, I expected Chris Wray probably was going to resign under a recommendation to resign a couple of weeks ago. It didn't happen. So I'm all for it. I say kudos. If it happens, it happens. It needs to happen.
Yeah, a lot of people have been talking about the fact that, Wray didn't open that investigation into Hunter Biden's foreign business dealings, even though there's been scrutiny for at least a year that we know of about it, and that Trump was mad that Wray told Congress last month that he hasn't seen any evidence of widespread voter fraud. So why do you think he is waiting until after the election just to kind of...
Well, I think after running the way he did in trying to fill the seat as fast as he could with Amy Coney Barrett and this empty judicial seat, I think that was enough for him of trying to enact all these changes that needed to happen prior to the election. Personally, I think if you're really going to drain the swamp, you need to drop a stick of dynamite in the thing and let's really blow the thing up. So if you're going to do that, whether it's Agbar or whoever's in with the FBI, whoever replaces Chris Wray, somebody's got to go after this stuff. And let's get to the bottom of it. Listen, if there is nothing there with Hunter Biden, then let's see that nothing is there. Look, I don't care if Hunter Biden did drugs. I don't care who Hunter Biden had sex with, as long as it wasn't an underage person. I don't care about his personal life. But if it benefited the Biden family to the point where now we see that this money being funneled out of Ukraine, funneled out of Russia, funneled out of China is actually influencing Joe Biden, there's no telling where all money is coming from. Those are the things we have to know in Washington, D.C.
The really scary thing is nobody's really talking about the photos. We know the photos are real. I mean, that's easy to debunk. So we know the photos are real. How they got there, I don't know. But they are real. And I, like you, I don't care about anybody's personal life. I really don't. What I do care about is a president that can be blackmailed. And if you see how hostile he gets with his son, I don't want to go to war because somebody has threatened their son. I also don't want somebody to do something they shouldn't be doing to protect their son. You can't have the president of the United States in a compromised position. You can't. And Hunter Biden absolutely does that. I personally think that Hunter was the Fredo Corleone, and thinks he's been doing right. Now can't really live with himself and doesn't like the hand he's been dealt by his father. But either way, the president would be compromised.
And there's no question. You got to look at it and say he's at least compromised by China. There's no question. Then $3.5 million from a Russian oligarch, it's not a good look.
No, definitely not.
Not a good look.
Do you think any of this news is going to affect the election at all? There's a lot of people that still haven't voted. I mean, they had great turnout for early voting, and it's still going on in most places. But do you think any of this will make someone stop and think twice and go, do I want to vote for Joe Biden?
I was going to vote for Trump. I was going to vote for Trump until 50 Cent came out today and said, F Trump. Now I'm back on the other. I don't know what to do.
Wait, 50 Cent came back?
50 Cent came back today. He retracted.
Oh, what did he get, a deal from China?
Apparently the cabal, the Hollywood cabal knocked on his door, and maybe he took Chelsea Handler up on her offer. I don't know. But he came back with a big F Trump.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because the woke Hollywood party, have you heard the knock-knock joke from the woke Hollywood party? Yeah. Knock. Yeah, I'll say, yeah.
Who's there?
Knock.
Who's there?
We will answer the questions. We will ask the questions. We will ask them and answer them.
Shine the light.
All right, there's one for you to tell all of your friends later today. All right. Okay, we got to go to break, but when we come back, we're going to be talking about Kamala Harris, talking about being the most far left in the U.S. Senate and how she handled that. We want to thank our sponsor, Home Title Lock. You know, here's how easy home title theft is. The legal titles to our homes, they are digitized and they're kept on government and business servers in the cloud where they can be hacked. A cyber thief, they find your home's title. They forge the signature on a quick claim deed stating that you sold your home to them, and then it's done. Then he takes out loans against your home until all your equity is gone and leaves you in debt. And you won't know until the collection calls come pouring in. So you're not protected by your insurance, your bank, or common identity theft programs. But Home Title Lock, they protect you. Home Title Lock puts a barrier around your home's title, and the instant that they detect tampering, they will shut it down. So go to HometitleLock.com and register your address to see if you're already a victim, and then use code RADIO for 30 days of free protection. That's code RADIO at HometitleLock.com. We'll be right back. Did you watch the 60 Minutes interview last night with Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and Donald Trump? If you didn't, you've probably heard people talking about it this morning. And one thing that really stood out was when Senator Kamala Harris was struggling to respond to a question, and when she was confronted over the fact that she's been rated the most far-left member of the U.S. Senate. I want you to listen to this clip.
You're considered the most liberal United States senator.
Somebody said that, and it actually was Mike Pence on the debate stage. But
Well, actually, the nonpartisan GovTrack has rated you as the most liberal senator. You supported the Green New Deal. You supported Medicare for all. You've supported legalizing marijuana. Joe Biden doesn't support those things. So are you going to bring the policies, those progressive policies that you supported as senator, into a Biden administration?
What I will do, and I promise you this, and this is what Joe wants me to do, this was part of our deal. I will always share with him my lived experience as it relates to any issue that we confront. And I promised Joe that I will give him that perspective and always be honest with him.
And when Joe is ushered out, I'm sure she will just honor his legacy. like Johnson honored Kennedy. Not a chance. I love the fact she's not proud of it. You, Glenn, you're the most conservative person in the world. Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't have to say who said it. I'm glad it was said. Notice she doesn't, first of all, she is so obnoxious and so unlikable when she has the fakey laugh. And she does it every time she's uncomfortable, It's cringeworthy. It just makes your skin crawl. Because
body language is horrible.
Yes.
Facial expressions are horrible. Yeah, because if you said to me, look, Chad, you've always been extremely pro-life. You believe that life begins at conception. Now, would you bring that into an administration? I'd say, you're damn right I am. 100%. That's what I believe. It's my conviction. But what the interview went on to say, when she said, I'm going to be honest with Joe, they said, does that include progressive and socialistic policies? And she says, no, it's just my experience as a little black girl. Wait a minute.
Is that what Joe said? So wait a minute. You're saying to you that we sat down and you're Kamala and I'm Joe, and I'm like, and what I really want from you is a viewpoint of a little black girl.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't think that happened.
Exactly. I said the exact same thing on my show. I said, imagine that conversation if it happened. That's fiction. And you just said, to be honest. And you're lying. We know you're lying, because that doesn't happen in the real world.
Do you think she was surprised by the statement that she's
100%. They're little darlings. They're not supposed to get pushed back. I love it when they get pushed back. They have no preparation whatsoever to deal with any of that.
She would answer that differently had she not been on CBS.
Yeah. Her eyes kind of glazed over for a second when she was asked that question, because you could see the wheels turning, like, what do I say? What do I do? How do you think this is going to play out with her?
Well,
I think she'll be the most unpopular president of all time.
And she's going to get there faster than anybody can imagine.
Yeah.
She is, Joe Biden is the Trojan horse, and inside is Kamala Harris and all the socialists. She's an unlikable person, as the Democrats found out themselves. This is what kills me. Democrats look and just like they want to beat Donald Trump so badly, they'll take a guy who's on his last legs and vote for him, and the one they've already said, out of all of them, she's the most unlikable. And be cool with it. Like, there's not a problem with Joe Biden.
This is a person on the debate stage who looked at Joe and said, now, Joe, I don't think you're a racist, but now I'm going to accuse you of every racist thing you've ever done. And he's going to pick her as his running mate? No.
Not her. The little black girl.
The little black girl. Not the girl who touted being an American Indian that won a Senate seat, or the person whose father's from the West Indies or Jamaica, or a mother from India. She's a little black girl suddenly. But I mean, you can identify as anything.
Well, let's talk about someone else who I wouldn't say wins a lot of points for being likable. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she said on CNN State of the Union yesterday that she believes it's extremely important that Joe Biden offer Senator Bernie Sanders and other progressive leaders cabinet positions if he is elected president. Let's listen to this.
Sanders has expressed an interest in potentially serving as Biden's labor secretary if Biden wins the White House. How crucial is it to the progressive movement that Biden offers an important position to Bernie Sanders in a Biden cabinet? Should that happen? Should Biden win?
I am not familiar personally with any of Senator Sanders's requests or non-requests. I do not know personally about the veracity of this, but you know, I believe that it's critically important that the Biden administration appoint progressive leaders, whether it's in labor, whether it's in the Treasury, whether it's, you know, Secretary of Education, etc.
Oh my gosh, how terrifying are those three? Secretary of Labor.
Imagine
the consequences of that. The Secretary of the Treasury being a big progressive. Are you kidding me?
Or education.
Yeah. You think they can't make it worse? Oh, yes, they can.
Yeah, and I mean, first of all, she gets on that last nerve right there, that one. And I'm like, why do you keep giving this lady airtime? Why? They're like, well, she just lives in your head. No, we're just listening to see what stupid thing she says next. But it's that last nerve she gets on. But that's me being petty. But can you imagine Bernie Sanders in any? And so the issue is never the issue. If you listen closely when she says, well, I don't know, but then she lists off 3 very key cabinet positions that could realistically totally damage this republic.
Oh, kill it. The education would kill it.
With Bernie Sanders in that position.
Bernie Sanders in labor, the labor laws that would come through, the restrictions and the freedom of the labor unions coming through.
Communist dream.
Holy cow. And then the endless printing of the Treasury.
Mm-hmm. Well, Politico did report that Sanders is interested in becoming Biden's labor secretary. If he is tapped for a cabinet position,
the news is, I don't know if either one of them can push checkers across the board all the way themselves at this point. Well, I'm trying to get it the other side of the board. Ooh, why don't you take it a bit there, Joe? I'm a little sleepy now.
Can you drag it? Just drag it to me.
I mean, come on up.
Real quickly, I just want to mention, too, the polls in 2020, they are nearly identical to the ones from 2016, according to Real Clear Politics. They keep a running average of all the polls. And in the top battleground states, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Arizona, Wisconsin, Biden currently holds a 4-point lead in the average. In 2016, Clinton held a 3.5-point lead. There's more data to suggest that this isn't over because the Trafalgar Group chief pollster, Robert Cahaley, he got it mostly right in 2016. He showed Trump leading Clinton in the key battleground states like Pennsylvania, Florida, and Michigan. He won all 3, despite some of the other polls saying that he was going to lose. So now Cahaley's saying Trump's poised to do it again.
So Trafalgar is an interesting, most pollsters don't like Trafalgar because they say that his methodology is screwed up. But he was right in 2016, he was right in 2018. And he admits that we're not doing it the way everybody else because he says he can find the actual Trump supporters that no one else can find. Don't know if that's true or not. We'll see. One area of caution is Hillary was at 3.5 at this, but she was going down. Joe is still holding steady. This is right around the time where Comey came out and had that shock that she was still under investigation, and that's when that split happened. And we're seeing a little bit of a surge for Donald Trump, but we're not seeing Joe Biden lose any ground.
Very interesting. We can't always trust the polls. All right, we got to go to break. We come back, we're going to talk about a Vanity Fair article that's making a lot of people really upset, so stick around.
It's a Vanity Fair. I've canceled my subscription to Vanity Fair.
I still get Teen Vogue, though.
Yeah.
A Vanity Fair writer, she said some things that really upsetting a lot of people. She's trying to suggest that Judge Amy Coney Barrett could possibly see a scenario in which abortion should be punishable by death because the Supreme Court nominee did what any fair-minded judge should do and refused to answer how she would rule in hypotheticals, like many of the other women and men before her who were asked these sorts of questions. It's a writer named Bess Levin for Vanity Fair. She called Amy Coney Barrett's refusal to say how she would rule in hypothetical cases a shtick. She said that the allegations stem from a question asked by Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. He asked Barrett in a follow-up question, under an originalist theory of interpretation, would there be any constitutional problem with a state making abortion a capital crime, thus subjecting women who get abortions to the death penalty? And Amy Coney Barrett said, as a sitting judge and judicial nominee, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to offer an opinion on abstract legal issues or hypotheticals. So how do you think this writer came to that extreme conclusion?
Because that is the way they play ball. Well, I'm going to talk to you about Supreme Court, later. I want to keep focus on Joe Biden. So I'm going to talk to you about the packing the Supreme Court. You'll just have to wait for that. Well, what are they saying? What are they really saying? So when they hear somebody who's being honest and doing their job, they immediately think they're like them. Mm-hmm. That's
a great point.
She didn't answer that question, and she shouldn't answer that question. Ginsburg didn't answer those questions. You don't do it because then you show bias. It has to be the case that is argued in front of you, not some hypothetical. But I have to tell you, Vanity Fair decides there's enough room to print that fantasy, and doesn't find any room for Hunter Biden's actual evidence. Mm-hmm. It's crazy.
That is crazy.
They're saving that for Teen Vogue. I always get my hard-hitting journalism from Vanity Fair. I really do. This is my first go-to place.
I also get my jokes from there. I love the cartoons.
I just like the perfume ads. I rub them all over my skin. It's really interesting, isn't it? To me, that's just another way the left reveals what they would do in certain situations. I mean, the fact that you would take it to that extreme is crazy. It just shows more of the insanity that's out there, and people read this stuff; they believe it.
That's what scares me, is that people really do take.
Well, I mean, it's coyotes at the border.
That was insane.
I mean,
that's insane.
Don't get the left talking about the elephant in the room, because it really leaves a stink. And the drug mules that are out there. I mean, there's just nothing more than a donkey by any other name.
Pete is very upset. Coyotes, mules, donkeys, elephants.
Well, while we're talking about,
but if you live in a world where you can redefine everything and make up your own truth, it's your truth, and all this, you can come up with all of these asinine stories of fantasy and fiction that are out there,
and nobody
put them out there. And call it journalism. It's completely subjective, and nobody's going to say anything about it. Because why not? It could, hypothetically could happen.
It's the perfect segue for the next story. Remember when Senator Mazie Hirono said sexual preference, that's offensive and it's an outdated term and we shouldn't be using it?
Sure, yeah.
Well, it turns out, I mean, we've seen those montages of lots of other, both Republicans and Democrats using the term sexual preference. But Joe Biden actually used that term back in May of this year, so not that long ago. And a National Review reporter, his name is John McCormick, he confronted Hirono over Biden using sexual preference recently and asked if she would hold him to the same standard that she used against Amy Coney Barrett. And he said, should Joe Biden apologize too, like Amy Coney Barrett did? And Hirono said, Joe Biden's not up for the Supreme Court. He's up for the presidency. He said, so shouldn't he apologize? He's up for the presidency. Don't you think an apology is in order? And she said, people will decide. And so then the reporter said, so you don't want to call on him to apologize too? And she said, oh, stop it. The world's in flames. Mm-hmm. And that was the end of the conversation. So
that was so last week.
It really was.
That outrage was so last week. We got a new outrage to go over now.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a double standard.
Well, it offends the misogyny and all of that offends the sexist in me. But it's so dumb. I mean, just come up with terms. Socialism, at the end of the day, let me unpack this just for a second. Socialism is religion. It's religion. It requires existentialism and postmodernism and those underpinnings of that. So with those things, when you can identify reality however you want to identify it, and you come up with your own terms, and you can do it. So last week, that was a reality. This week, it's not a reality. And so those kind of underpinnings, when they come in, if everything is meaningless, then we're all meaningless. And until we embrace our meaninglessness and find our meaning in the community, in the corporate socialism, where we all, because this life is all we have. Mm-hmm. So I got to make the most of it. Therefore, I should have a right to health care, I should have a right to this and right to that and a right to education, all these things. Ultimately, that collective becomes my religion.
Here are the two words you're going to start hearing. If Joe Biden wins, you're going to start hearing these two words a lot. Stakeholder capitalism. Stakeholder capitalism. And what it means is collective. It's a Chinese capitalism kind of model. But that's what's coming, where if you're a stakeholder, you've got to share your wealth to the other stakeholders. You have to, if you're a company, you have to do what the state says because they know what's best.
That's good.
Mark my words, the new version of fascism, communism, socialism, whatever you want to call it, is called stakeholder capitalism.
That's good.
Well, they better try and come and take it. I'm going to hang out with Chad Prather. I'll be like, come and take it.
I'm hiding out in Glenn Beck's office.
I'm in the mountains, so have at it.
All right, we got to go to break. We'll be back in just a minute.
Stakeholder capitalism.
Huh?
Stakeholder capitalism.
Yeah. And I see the whole Time magazine, the whole magazine this week.
California may soon allow some 17-year-olds to vote in elections. It's called Proposition 18. It's amendment to the state constitution to be approved at the ballot box next month. Now, should this pass, 17-year-olds in the state would be allowed to vote in primary and special elections if they turn 18 before the general election. So similar laws like this, they've already been passed in at least a half dozen other states, including states like Mississippi and Kentucky. In some other states, however, 17-year-olds who turn 18 by the date of the election, they can vote in Democratic primaries, but not in Republican primaries. So interesting. So,
is it?
I mean, some people said this would mean high school seniors would be voting for important tax measures only adults would pay.
That's why when when the left says women didn't vote in colonial era, yeah, they did. Yeah, they did. Only one person from each tax-paying, land-owning household paid. So it could be the wife, it could be the husband, but they had one vote for each household. So, and only if you owned the land, you had to have a stake in it. If you weren't paying the taxes, you didn't get to vote. That's the problem with the system that we have now.
Right.
If I wasn't paying taxes, I'd be for free stuff galore. Yeah, I want free college. I want free stuff because I have no connection of where it's even coming from.
Yeah.
You know, can we print more money? Sure, why not? Because you don't understand what it means in the end. That's the real problem.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, let's remember socialism. Those who cry for it the most usually contribute the least. And that's exactly what we see in that case. And this is, again, we're heading towards, let's call it what it is, a socialist, especially if Kamala Harris gets in.
And I think if either of them get in, we're heading for a great reset.
It's going to be a great reset.
Well, Nancy Pelosi, she's all for this, too. She had a similar argument back in 2019 in favor of lowering the voting age for federal elections. And then in San Francisco, they have a city-specific measure passed that 16-year-olds would be allowed to vote in local elections.
That's fantastic. I'd like my cat, my dog, and Sarah's new infant to be able to vote for Donald Trump.
Well, I just find this so weird that they're wanting to make the voting age younger, but they want to make the age that you are to own a gun older.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. They want you to be able to vote for them. But if the studies were showing that the schools were churning out conservatives, they would not be saying lower the voting age. It's not only the gun registration, it is also remember, you're an adult at 27 now because of Obamacare.
Right.
You can live on your parents' own stuff because you're still classified as a kid at 26. That's insane.
Yeah. I mean, don't forget, at Joe Biden's town hall, he did say 8 and 9-year-olds should be able to determine if they want to have a gender reassignment. It's up to them. So why not let them vote at 16? I mean, let the 8-year-olds vote. Sure. I'm sure they're up on the issues.
Right.
Can you imagine? I remember being 17 years old, barely.
Right.
I remember what I was doing and what I was interested in.
And it wasn't this.
It wasn't politics.
No.
Well, while we're talking about young kids in a totally different context, Netflix, they've had that controversy all year about Cuties Chat. I know you've talked about it quite a bit on your show. So Netflix cancellations, they have just skyrocketed, I think far beyond what Netflix anticipated. 800%. That's a huge percentage of cancellations. Their chief financial officer, Spence Neumann, reportedly downplayed the controversy when they had a call this week with the company. He instead focused on how the coronavirus pandemic helped them meet their subscription goals. However, Netflix lost 5 times as many subscribers in September's first couple of weeks.
Good. And now we've got the biggest promotion going at BlazeTV. 30% off. So you can come from Netflix right over here. Now, don't forget, they're going to do everything they can to censor us. My wife sent me a screenshot a little while ago. She was trying to watch an episode of On the Blaze, your show, as a matter of fact, and it was saying not available at this time because of network interference. It was a screenshot on the thing. And I thought, now, isn't that interesting? But yet, Vanity Fair can print their garbage. Well, Netflix can do their garbage.
Last week, we did a show on radio. One of the most prestigious heritage foundations that goes and looks at your genealogy. A report like we shared would have cost probably 80 grand, okay? Really well done. We did the genealogy of Joe Biden, and we found that the Robinette family, Joe's father's side, owned slaves, and they only got rid of slaves when the North won the war, okay? And they passed the slaves on. We had all the documents and everything else. Well, we were throttled by Facebook because they said that's not true. We challenged it. We had to produce all the documents, which were there in the story, okay? They reviewed it. It took us, I don't know how many days to challenge it, but they throttled us. They throttled my voice, so people were not getting anything from me until we cleared that up. That's who are they to tell me what's real and what's not? I mean,
on my pages last week.
It's all there. All of it's there.
Yeah. I have a good friend that's conservative, and she posts quite a bit of news stories. And I used to see her post all the time, every time I would log in. And I didn't see them at all for weeks. Yeah. And I messaged her and I said, have you just not been very active? And she said, no, I've been heavily shadow banned. I have no idea why. And even when I was direct messaging her, it wouldn't show up in my inbox. Her replies, they were down at the very bottom. They weren't even coming up to the top. So it was like I couldn't even communicate with her. It was bizarre.
Just think of, this is Black Mirror. Just think of what that means when they take that to everyone. If you have a low social score, if you're not saying the right things, if you're emailing, texting the wrong people, you're at the bottom of everybody's list. You just disappear.
Yeah.
So frightening.
Apply that to things like credit scores. Let's say you've got a good credit score numerically, but they say, no, we don't want to loan this to you. We don't. That's not going to. You can't buy this home. You know why? Because you have the wrong opinions. You have the wrong ideology.
This is stakeholder capitalism.
Stakeholder capitalism. That's right.
Hearing a lot more about that. All right, so we've got to go to break. We come back, we'll have our question of the day. Stick around for that.
That's exactly what it is. If you disagree, you're cut off on everything.
I'm trying to do a live feed video from the page.
All right, on Friday, we asked you guys who you thought won the debate last week. 80% of you said Trump, 20% of you said Biden. That sounds about right to me. I mean, there were a couple people who thought Biden did well, but for the most part, I felt like the general consensus, at least among our audience, was that Trump just killed it.
Yeah, I went home, and my wife, who made me go to the Trump train, on the highway yesterday, and is a huge Trump supporter. I came home and she said, he lost, didn't he? And I said, what? She said, I watched like the first 30 minutes of it, and then I got busy with the kids, and she said, he didn't do well, did he? And I was shocked to hear that. But the first 30 minutes was all about COVID.
Right. Yeah, he did great. All right, our question today, will the Hunter Biden allegations seriously impact the 2020 race?
Nope. It will impact long-term the media. The media is destroying itself right now.
So you really think that if for some reason Biden did get elected, you think they're going to start taking a more active interest in the story as a way to move him to the side?
I think that once the ding-dong, the witch is dead with Donald Trump, they'll feel responsible to make sure that they all of a sudden become the people's, and they're also deep down the socialist road. So Joe Biden is actually a road bump, speed bump.
What do you have for us this week? You have something exciting coming up on Wednesday?
We do the first 100 days of Joe Biden. In his own words, what they're planning on doing the first 100 days, the skin will peel off your face. It's so frightening.
Can't wait.
We don't want to miss that. Yeah.
I love Glenn Beck.